our talk. So I'm Adam Vaughan, and I'm the Climate Change and Environmental Project Officer at Ryedale District Council. Yeah, I think this is probably my third or fourth REG talk that I've had the pleasure of being on now, which is brilliant. I gave, I think one of the first talks I gave was actually on Ryedale District Council's Climate Change Action Plan. It'll be either November or early on this year, so quite a long time ago, really. So yeah, so it's lovely to be here, and yeah, looking forward to hearing all your questions and thoughts on where we want to take climate action for Ryedale and North Yorkshire going forward. So I'll hand over to Joss.
You're on mute. We said it. We all do it, don't we? So it had to happen. It's normally me, Joss. So
sorry, I'm going to get the giggles now. Just wanted to say it was so lovely to see all my old colleagues from Ryedale. As many of you will know, I worked previously at Ryedale District Council for more years than I can remember, I think, and then latterly moved to the Local Enterprise Partnership Low Carbon team. And then from January this year, I've been working with North Yorkshire County Council as their Climate Change Policy Officer, working very closely with all the district colleagues from around North Yorkshire and with City of York, and continuing those partnerships also with the Local Enterprise Partnership and the Low Carbon team. So it's lovely to see all the faces of the people that I worked with for so many years, and I hope you'll enjoy what Adam and I are going to tell you.
Fabulous. Thanks, Joss. So yeah, we should have some slides here. So let me load them for you. I think I should be able to give you control of them. So just a second. Make sure I pick the right person from the list, and then you should be away.
Okay, thanks for that. So this is one of a series of presentations that we've been giving around North Yorkshire. I wonder if one or two of you on this call might have heard some of the other presentations actually. But so what we've been doing is speaking with community environmental groups around North Yorkshire, usually on MS Teams calls or Zoom calls. In a couple of cases in person, that was in Harrogate and in Scarborough, but generally speaking on Zoom calls. And what we would like to sort of convey is the fact that because we're going through local government reorganisation, I'm sure you're all familiar with that, where the 8 councils are going to be joining together into a unitary council, North Yorkshire Council. We just wanted to make sure that our colleagues in the community sector were aware that was happening, and that we're not stopping and starting again. It's very much transition. So I've been on all the calls around North Yorkshire, and the district colleague has been with me on the call that's relevant to their particular district. So what we're going to do is just give you a quick rundown of what we're doing at the moment, some of the current data and actions, but then the real thing that we really want to talk to you about is where we want to get to as North Yorkshire Council, and how we're currently getting there, and to get some early feedback from you on that. So there's our email addresses on that slide, so do contact either myself or Adam with any feedback after the event as well. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so the context that we're working in, I probably don't have to tell anybody on this call about all the different policies and strategies, all the way from the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Just flash up the all the different logos there, from all the way from the UN Development Goals through to somebody else appears to be controlling my screen, but never mind, that's better. To the national commitments, the commitment to net zero by 2050. And just whilst I'm on that subject, you may like to be aware of a national consultation that's just happening at the moment, run by the Department of Business, Energy and Industry, called the Net Zero Review, and I will pop a link in chat. That's available for anybody to respond to, although interestingly it doesn't include an email address to respond to, but if you can find somebody to tell what you think about it, then please do. There's also various strategies, electric vehicles, heat and buildings, etc. The one I like the best is the Climate Change Committee, which is that purple one in the middle with the sort of little orange segments on, because that's the kind of the legally binding advisory organisation to government, which tells them how they are doing on reaching their targets and doesn't pull any punches. We've also got a fantastic regional network, the chief executives working together for all the 22 local authorities in the patch on net zero, the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission, and also support from the North East Energy Hub, which is now called the Net Zero Hub, and that's kind of Bays out in the regions. And now as it's based at the Tees Valley Combined Authority. And then getting down to the sub-region, York and North Yorkshire, we've got the LEP route map to carbon negative, which I'm hoping you're all familiar with. There is a bit of a graphic on the screen, but if anybody wants more information about that, please do just email me and I'll give you the link through to the full paper. That's now been adopted by the LEP and we're bringing it to North Yorkshire Council to ask them to endorse it. And I think members at Rydell have had a presentation from Adam on it as well. The reason this is so important is because this is the overarching document that says how we can reach carbon negative in York and North Yorkshire by our target date of 2040. Supporting that, we're in the final throes of putting together the local area energy plan, which is a very data heavy but very granular and spatial look at our energy supply and demand needs over the next few years. And we've also got a circular economy strategy for the area and lots of opportunities through devolution and the mayoral combined authority, which is what the MCA stands for there. So a very busy context, so we're not going to try and reinvent the wheel with anything that we do. Okay, so a quick bit about some data. Again, I'm probably talking to people who know all this, but we collect our data in North Yorkshire on a trend basis from Bays, and they produce greenhouse gas emissions data. And for 2020, this was updated to now include methane and nitrous oxide. Previously, it only recorded carbon dioxide. So this changed quite a lot for us. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm saying you all know about it, but apologies. I do appreciate not everybody's quite as into the data as perhaps I am. So yeah, so the data was updated in 2020. It's updated annually, and that gives us good trend data for the area. But this time it now included methane and nitrous oxide. And those are two very potent greenhouse gases. They're not very big by volume, but they are much stronger by strength in terms of their impact on global warming. So the figures in red are from 2020 and the figures in blue are from 2019. So in 2020, they also separated out agriculture as its own sector to describe how those emissions sort of rate with each other, along with waste. So you can see that our emissions in 2020 were significantly higher than 2019, and that's because we've included methane and nitrous oxide in there, I think. And obviously the agricultural emissions are going to be largely from methane. The other interesting point, there's one about halfway down, which is LUCF, and that stands for land use change and forestry. So that's our trees and our grasslands and our crops. 2019 and previous years, for most rural areas, that was a negative figure. So you can see the blue bar just going down to the left there. But in 2020, they've remodeled how we calculate that. And now it's a little bit of a positive. And that's very interesting for rural areas in particular, because what was a sink for greenhouse gas emissions is now actually an emitter. And our sort of comfortable cushion has now gone, which is also interesting. Just a quick word on agriculture. I'm sure many of you will be aware it's obviously a very key important part of our local economy. And we have to be very careful in how we talk about agriculture and the emissions that come from that, because it is a key part of our economy. And so we tend to engage with the farming community on a sort of farm by farm basis and around what each practicing farm can do to reach their own net zero targets, rather than kind of sometimes we can blame agriculture for emissions, and essentially, they are just one sector and one industry. Okay, so I hope that's that slide. I hope you had a chance to just have a quick look at it. The other key sectors for us, particularly in local authority terms, where we have touch points and something we can do something about, is around transport, which is this one here in the middle, and domestic. So that's the emissions from housing. Now, our transport emissions do look like they've gone down, but of course this is 2020 when we weren't allowed to go anywhere. And so that's why it's gone down. And I'm pretty confident that will go back up again as time goes on. And the domestic emissions are from, as I just explained, are from our households, largely due to the poor quality of our housing stock, older housing stock, and our reliance on gas as well. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of current North Yorkshire County Council policy and activity. So we have a council plan, which I'm pleased to say the values and ambitions do include a lot of reference to being environmentally aware and reducing the causes and impacts of climate change now for future generations. We have an internal programme called the Beyond Carbon Transformation Programme, and that's a programme to deliver the North Yorkshire County Council Carbon Reduction Plan. That is very much focused on our operational carbon emissions, so mostly around fleet, so the vans and trucks and vehicles that we drive, utilities in our buildings, and also the mileage that our officers do. So it is largely based around that. We do also do a lot of other activity around climate change as part of our functions as a council in terms of providing public transport and things like cycling and walking, implementation plans and that type of thing. But I think we're not great at telling people about it, and that's one of the issues we're hoping to address. We do have a communications programme and put in all the activities that we're doing for climate change in our quarterly performance reports called a Q report. If anybody wants to see them, they are online on the council's website. And we also try and include something in the leader's statement, etc. We are developing an e-newsletter. We've had some technical issues about that, and some of you might be on my sort of round robin York and North Yorkshire climate practitioners email. I'll be sending something out this week, actually. If you are on that, you can expect something to come into your inbox. But we are hoping to produce more of a sort of an electronic newsletter to try and gather together all the information, not just about the County Council, but about all the other activities that are going around in North Yorkshire. As part of the Beyond Carbon programme, we've got some funding from a pump priming pot, and there you can see there in the bullet points the list of some of the activities that we've funded through that programme. And I always forget to say this, I really should put this at the top because it was a real red letter day. We have actually declared a climate emergency in July 2022. So I was really pleased when that happened, as I'm sure you all were as well. So I think Adam's going to take us through some of the activity from Rydal District Council now.
Brilliant, thanks, Joss. And if I don't mind, yeah, I'll sort of say when you don't mind skipping on to the next slide, if that's all right. Yeah, so really today, climate action in Rydal, you know, I suppose in its current form officially began in 2019 when our elected members of the council declared a climate emergency. As part of that declaration, it was essentially galvanizing action towards getting to net zero emissions by 2050, so aligning to the national target there. As part of that declaration, there's kind of three core areas that was very much built into that. The first is setting an example. If we're expecting Rydal to decarbonise, we need to be showing and leading the way in decarbonising how we operate and work on a day-to-day time. It's very much showing how you can do that. Second part then is with everything we're doing, very much consider energy consciously. So how do you reduce initially the amount of energy you're using with our projects or other activities that are occurring, and then looking into more renewable and sustainable processes as we go down the route. And then thirdly, by sort of saying encouraging, this is very much supporting Rydal collectively in the journey to net zero through sort of, like say, acting responsibly. So it's encouraging the entire district as a whole to come on the journey with us on there, really. So in terms of galvanizing that action and very much putting it into a holistic document on what we want to do, climate change action plan was brought into fruition, very much a living document. Those of you that may have been on my talk, it would have been a good couple of months ago now, sort of set out the stage of what the plan looks like, but it's essentially a living document. We want it to be you know, essentially changing and evolving, bringing in good practices, understanding what we need to go further and faster with, bringing in those really good, you know, good areas that we're seeing from either other authorities or other organisations on there. So making sure it's fit for purpose. Otherwise, you know, there's not much point in having one really. So every year we also assess what our carbon emissions are. Our baseline was 2018-19. So we use a tool that comes from the local government association. It allows you to very much look at electricity use, gas use, what your fleet uses in terms of, you know, litres or mileage. It tries to break down into as many sources as you can. There's 3 different scopes. Scope 1 very much is direct emissions. That's direct burning of gas or fuel in vehicles. Scope 2 is then more electricity use. So the electricity has been made somewhere else, so those emissions are happening off-site, and then it starts to get a lot more complicated when you look at scope 3, which is more to do with supply chains, staff travel, other areas in there. Now, to get to net zero by 2050, just doing the maths on there, the target essentially was a 5% reduction per year. So from 2018-19 financial year, 5% every single year from that point. Now, as of last financial year, so 2021-22, that would have been year number 3. So we should have hit 15%. We're just under 20% there. So we are achieving our targets, which is the from the polar plot there. 15% is our sort of thicker black line, and then we're actually past that now. So it's going in a clockwise direction. Have seen similar again, a bit of an uptick in emissions, but that is not very surprising with sort of COVIDs and as business starts to return a little bit more to usual. So we are going faster than where we wanted to be, but we very much want to build on this and not stand still. We want to go faster on this there really, but it's just good to know that we are going down the right track. Could I have the next slide, please, Joss? So I just wanted to give a bit of a overview really to what kind of programs we have in our action plan, and then very much where we've seen areas that actually collaborating effectively over the different districts across North Yorkshire has already started to bear fruit. So the action plan itself in its current form has got 4 key areas. First, very much looks at our buildings and our assets. Key areas of that are understanding how we take our current buildings, analyse what the energy usages are, decarbonise our heating systems, LED lighting, other energy efficient measures that allow them to be fit for purpose whilst also supporting, you know, getting to our net zero target on there. Already had a strong area of work retrofitting street lighting, so most of the ones that we own in Malton and Norton have already been done, which is brilliant, and going forward we'll be looking at over a couple of programs retrofitting the remainder of our street lighting so they're all on energy efficient LEDs. Second area then very much looks at our transport and our vehicles. So that's everything from how our staff move about on a day-to-day basis. Also starting to look at our street scene operation. So both our support and bigger vehicles, and start to understand going forward, how do we want to decarbonise them as a sort of a key source really. But we know in addition to looking at our own vehicles, if we want to support Rydale as a whole in decarbonising, electric vehicles are going to play quite a key part in this going forwards. So to support this, we've already installed between 30 and 40 electric vehicle charge points around a lot of our different car parks and other assets. And going forward, we want to strengthen this type of investment really. So very much putting the building blocks in place to convince our citizens to invest in cleaner modes of transport, and making sure that infrastructure is in place to support them with that. Talking about sort of collective action, we essentially a group of different authorities led by the County Council applied to the Levi bids, which is very much around having community-based charge points and linking them to renewables. So that project did get funded, which is brilliant. So each of the different districts will get charge points of this, and it just shows that by working collectively, there really is very much power in numbers there. We also want to look at how we can further support active travel. We do want people to be transitioning to cleaner modes of transport, but also reducing private vehicle journeys as well. So if people can use active transport or public transport, understanding what we want to do going forward to further support this. So the Malton to Pickering cycle route has been an example of this kind of investment that's gone on quite recently. But going forward, we'll be looking at other areas where we want to invest in new cycle routes or active travel support on there. The third area very much is then sort of council operations, and embedded within this is very much how we're supporting retrofit schemes. So now that going forward, supporting basically supporting people's homes and getting to higher energy efficiency standards, which helps reduce bills, also helps reduce fuel poverty as well. These kind of programs using government funding has been sort of a key part of this this part of the plan to date. We've got a current program of work with the County Council Scarborough and Hambleton going, which is the LAD3 and the HUG schemes. So that's very much on grid and off grid. So it's understanding what can we do to essentially bring these properties into a better energy efficiency states going forwards. Second part of that is we're also going through a review of our Rydale plan and understanding how we can further embed climate change action and mitigation in there, adaptation and mitigation, sorry, in there as well. So a key opportunity to look at that. The fourth area, which probably forms the biggest part of the action plan, very much delves into what we call council leadership, but I see it more as supporting Rydale. It's very much understanding what do we need to do to support all areas of Rydale and achieving net zero as we go forward. Anything from our businesses to our citizens, initiatives such as supporting circular economy, very much community scale led climate action. Also areas looking at renewable energy, such as the geothermal project that's been going on over the last couple of months, supporting the community engagements around this and what it might mean for our residents on district heating. And then also looking at what are the barriers to areas such as active travel and others on there. So lots of different areas within this climate action, but just trying to highlight some of the areas that we've been working on to date. We very much see the priorities within this action plan and all the different projects. These will all continue on as we transition into the new council, and it's very much a lift and shift into the new authorities action plan on there. But I'll hand over back to Joss now to very much set the scene on where we want to go next.
You're okay, Joss. You're muted still. I'm mute, and I'll help you if I can. You're muted, Joss. So can you not see the screen to right? I think there we are.
That's better. I couldn't unmute myself. It's very rare that I'm not able to say what I want to say.
That's strange.
Yeah. Anyway, here we are. We're back. So now you'll see on this slide, it has our new temporary logo. This isn't the permanent logo for the new council. It is the temporary one that we're using just to indicate this part of the talk. We just moved on from having the two separate authorities into the new council. So this is where we want to be. Now, this is a diagram some of you may be familiar with called the onion diagram. I think I've taken it from somebody else's report and they took it from somewhere else. But it's about the spheres of influence. It's about what touch points local authorities have in order to support decarbonisation activity. So the two blue rings at the top are around the things that Adam and I have been talking about, things under our direct control, so buildings, operations and travel. The second one is around procurement and commissioning. And just for information, we did a piece of work at the County Council a couple of years ago, which showed that the carbon emissions from the things that we buy, so the things that we procure and commission, are 15 times higher than the carbon emissions from the things that we have direct control over. So you can see the order of magnitude there's really important, and we're all starting to do work with our supply chains and our suppliers to encourage them to decarbonise as well. But what we want to do with the new strategy and our new approach is to really embrace those other spheres of influence. So our ability to shape places using powers to control development and transport, to really support showcasing of projects, building those partnerships, and improving, engaging and communicating our activities and supporting communities to get involved in this area of work. So that's where we want to really place the new council strategy. So we've got two fantastic opportunities to do that right now. The first one is with local government reorganisation. Climate change has been included as the design principle to embed it throughout all those local government reorganisation proposals. So there are various work streams set up. You can imagine the complexities of bringing together 8 organisations, so 8 HR policies, 8 IT policies, 8 local plans, bringing them all together. So LGR has been a design principle that's come through all those work streams where we're bringing those pieces of work from the 8 authorities together. And to support that, we have a climate change working group that advises all the work streams and also supports them to develop climate change impact assessments. So that's where we're looking at how their policies and their procedures impact on climate change, and that is throughout all the work streams and all the decisions that are made. And we're also going to be bringing together, as Adam indicated there, the 8 carbon and climate strategies from around the patch. That's a little screenshot of all some of the climate officers on one of the meetings. Unfortunately, Adam wasn't there that day, but I think what we're trying to sort of convey with this slide is that it's all the same people that you've been working with previously will be working in the new authority. And as Adam said, there's a lot of transition, and we're not just going to be stopping doing what we're doing now and starting from scratch. We also have the opportunity of devolution. Now, this is quite a busy slide and I'm not going to read it out entirely, but I've tried to highlight there devolution. So devolution is where City of York Council and the new North Yorkshire Council will work together to form what's called a mayoral combined authority. And that combined authority will take on some of the roles and responsibilities of the local authority. And in signing that devolution deal that's now going to go out for public consultation, at the heart of that is the desire to be the first carbon negative economy. And then if you remember back to one of the early slides, and I was talking about the route map to carbon negative, and that's why that document is so important, because it gives us the evidence to say that we can be England's first carbon negative economy. All the measures and the activities and the ambitions within that mean that we have the evidence to say we can be the first carbon negative economy, and that's included in our devolution activity. So as I say, I'm not going to go through that in lots of detail. You'll be able to read the slides later at your leisure. Just one thing I would mention is around what we call the co-benefits of climate change. So quite often people like Adam and I talk about climate change with people and they're just really not interested. It's not something that's a priority for them. So, but if you talk about some of those co-benefits, so things like financial improvement, so cheaper energy bills, for example, that's particularly pertinent right now, about improved health outcomes, so we can support activities around obesity and air quality and improved housing. Things like supporting economic growth and jobs, and just an example of that is the vast amount of money that we're going to be putting into housing retrofit across North Yorkshire. If we can get that money spent on our local supply chains, with our local supply chains, that's money directly into our businesses and into our economies. And also some of the themes around community cohesion and wealth building. So a lot of the transition to the low carbon economy will be in the hands of communities, community ownership of resources, whether that's a shared car scheme or the library of things in the circular economy, or ownership of community energy assets. So a lot of those co-benefits are sometimes what we talk about in climate change, where people perhaps aren't so interested in the subject of climate change itself. Okay, so 2 really good opportunities. So at the moment, we are drafting the North Yorkshire Council Climate Change Strategy. So I do emphasise the word council in this. This is the council's response to the route map to carbon negative and to the declaration of the climate emergencies that we've had across the districts and the county of North Yorkshire. So this is where we're going to look at how the council can respond to those 2 issues. We've got 4 themes running through the strategy in its draft phase, in its draft stage. The first one is mitigation. So that's decreasing greenhouse gas emissions from reducing energy consumption to decreasing the carbon content of that energy. We've got sequestration, which is about capturing carbon in organic matter such as trees and peat, but also about capturing it from industrial processes as well. We're going to be including a theme around adaptation. So we do know we are going to get global warming of up to hopefully not more than 2 degrees. And we know we're going to have to prepare for that. And I think this summer was a bit of an eye-opener for many people around the sort of what we thought was extreme weather events, which will be an everyday activity, and the drought conditions that we're still facing in Yorkshire as well as elsewhere. So preparing us for climate change. I'm then also hoping to include biodiversity, nature recovery, and linking those two things very closely together. The International Panel on Climate Change say you can't solve one without solving the other. So we want to make sure they're very closely linked together. The targets will replicate the York and North Yorkshire route map to carbon negative in its ambition. And also we're including several principles in terms of how we're going to approach this activity. One of them is around the spheres of influence that I talked about earlier. We want to embed climate change into all the services that the North Yorkshire Council provides. So it's not just Adam and I sitting in a climate change team in a room somewhere. We really want to embed climate change activity into every single service that we do at service level. I want to make sure that we're equipped for bidding for external funding. So often the first question I get asked, well, how much is all this going to cost? And I sometimes think it's not nice to look at how much it's going to cost because it's astronomical. And, you know, if we did that, we would all go home tomorrow. But there are lots of opportunities to bid for external funding. So some of the housing funding that Adam was talking about, that was bid for by North Yorkshire County Council's Public Health Department. And that means we can roll out that support for housing retrofitting, for example. But we need to be equipped and able to bid for that external funding. We want to be preparing ourselves for devolution, so we're not setting off anything now that can't be then transferred into the mayoral combined authority, and we want to focus on those co-benefits. I didn't mention right at the beginning there as well, the inclusive transition. So this is a really important principle whereby we want to make sure the transition to the green economy is available to every resident in North Yorkshire. And just because you're living in the Dales somewhere, you don't have access to public transport, or if you're isolated somewhere, or it doesn't matter about your financial standing, that we can include you in this transition and in this move to our response to climate change. So the consultation draft, we're planning to be ready for December 2022. This series of presentations and engagement we've been doing with community environmental groups is helping us to develop the content of the draft, along with some work with our county members and our partner organisations. So we hope to get the draft ready for December 2022. And then it will be out to public consultation between January and March 2023. So that's the opportunity for any member of the public to have their say on the proposals that will be included in the strategy. And just to manage everybody's expectations, this will be a strategic document, so it won't be a detailed action plan that's telling everybody exactly what we're doing. This is more of a strategic approach, which will outline the response of the new council to the route map and to our climate emergency declaration. So just a quick couple more slides. Just a reminder of those strategic influences that's kind of guided our thinking to this stage. That box at the bottom left there around North Yorkshire is perhaps the most important box for us. So that's where we want to, we're listening to the views of our elected members, residents and businesses and communities, and also town and parish councils, particularly in the public consultation phase, January to March, as I said. The strategy will also outline how our strategy will be performance managed, some of the detail on the sorts of information we'll be able to provide as key performance indicators, and who's going to be making sure that we are reaching our targets and that kind of activity. And then the last slide I've got is just a word about delivery. So just as a reminder, then, this is going to be a strategic document we're going to be bringing out, but concurrently we'll be writing the action plan, because as Adam said, we're going to be lifting the sort of activities from the 8 current plans that we have and putting them together into an action plan. Now that action plan will change, it'll be flexible, and it'll grow in its ambition over the years, but really we're hoping to get something in place for July 2023 that just really brings all our activity together. So we're going to be looking at direct operational services, as we've mentioned, really embedding climate change into all our services, widening that sphere of influence to support the place shaping agenda. So things like the local plan, things like local cycle walking plans, etc., town plans, town bids, all those sorts of things. And then really bringing out the enabling and the influencing role as well. So really working with our communities, and some of you may be familiar with the Developing Stronger Communities approach that the council's adopted for many years, where we've got a role in the community to help support and drive that side of things. And that also includes our aspirations to promote community energy as well. And we've just entered into a community energy pathfinder project to support that piece of work. The purple box down at the bottom there is very much open for debate at the moment. So we're just looking at the potential for developing some kind of external partnership or challenge group to work with the council, but external to it, to actually be an advocate, an advisor, a bit like that Committee on Climate Change, which had the little orange segments in the earlier slide. So we welcome some thoughts and feedback on that as well. So the next slide is just a series of questions, which I don't propose to go through in detail. I can see we've had some questions flashing up in the chat as well. But it's just really to guide some thinking and some comments from you. So any questions or comments on future activity, what your local priorities are, what your barriers to whatever it is your organisation would like to achieve if you represent an environmental group or an organisation or a business locally, and also to really welcome feedback on how you would like to engage with us as the strategy and the action plan develop, because this is not the end of the conversation, very much the beginning on this subject. So that's the end of the presentation. I don't know if you want to finish sharing the screen, and then we can see everybody again. And I think Adam and I are very happy to take questions. I haven't been able to keep up with them in the chat. So
fabulous. No, that's brilliant. Thanks, Joss. Thanks, Adam. You covered a lot of ground there, I think, in a fairly short space of time. So let me stop the recording there.